Like, share, subscribe, hit the super chat on the way in. First people in, let me know you're in. Okay, so this is gonna got it. Excuse me. This is going to be kind of a ramble. Just some random thoughts. I was checking out This Is Revolution last night at work, and I was listening in, and it was a record of Pascal Robert. Jason Miles wasn't in, so Pascal Robert and M. Toussaint speaking to Kike Autry, and Kike Autry was speaking about I've got to try to wait 30 seconds before I say it before I get flagged for it. But let's actually spell it out. So we'll just spell it out for the first couple times. The INCELS group of people, and you know what is kind of causing that. They also spoke about the hikikomori in Japan, um, and what may be causing that, and they came to similar conclusions. They did not mention feminism too tough, but they did mention capitalism. Well, they mentioned feminism. Let's retract. They mentioned feminism, but they didn't really delve in too much. But they did mention capitalism and kind of where black people kind of find themselves with that. Excuse me, not black people. Gotta be very careful. How young men find themselves right now. So, um, and I really want to get into Pascal because we got to hear certain things from the brother Pascal, my fellow Haitian, um, you know, and he gave us some things to kind of consider. Now, these are the things that I agree with. Because women have entered the workforce, capitalism has put men in a very awkward position when it comes to performing masculinity. And Pascal spoke of like the financial entry, the financial barrier, the financial cost of performing masculinity a certain way, right? Um, it wasn't alluded to, but I will say this just as a note: we have to act like women don't want that too, though. I mean, we have to act like it's not that women don't want that also. So performing this brand of masculinity that both men and women have signed on to, right? Um, but as Pascal said, that cost is pretty damn expensive, and it got even more expensive as time has progressed. Now, I think it's important that we stress that. By the way, I really want you guys to check this particular stream out with Pascal, M. Toussaint, and Kiki Autry. TK, I'm sorry, Kike Autry, Latino cat out of Puerto Rico. Or he's been here, I think, his whole adult life, but he was born in Puerto Rico. So, um, Pascal actually started to tell us, so give us a little bit of personal for him, and I think this is where it's very train tracks, train tracks, train tracks. I think this is where the conversation got pretty interesting. So Pascal is a attorney. He hasn't practiced in some years. I know at one point, at one point Pascal was living in New York. I think he's now here in South Florida. Um, and he was just speaking about, in many respects, he would even be considered an incel, right? He is disabled. He lives, from my understanding, um, in he's renting his mother's home. He is 55. He's not currently in a relationship, and he doesn't have any children. Where the conversation got really interesting is when they started to speak about men opting out of the system because, quite frankly, it's just untenable. Being a man in this current environment, as we've defined men, is untenable. But nobody actually has any interesting answers on how to be men without being women, right? And that's not to insult women. You know why Mr. Z has to say that? Because somewhere is some feminist that's going to try to extrapolate out something that's not only not being said, but not even being implied or suggested. So we're not saying man good, woman bad, caveman beat chest. No, we're not doing that. What we are saying is the juxtaposition of what we're telling these men, which by the way doesn't work. Even FD signifier had to concede that to a certain extent, right? Is for you to not be air quotes in this toxic masculine thing that cuts your life short, stresses you to death, is for you to be woman, right? And like what you find and what's hampering society, um hampering women, what's getting in the way of all of this are more and more young men opting out and living either a minimalist life or living at home with their parents well into their adulthood. And we have to be honest that a lot of people feel that. The government feels that. They feel their tax base slipping away. They feel their white bloodline slipping away, right? The women feel their dating choices and their mating options slipping away. This has nothing to actually do with men, to be frank. No one actually cares about men. They care about that tax base, right? They care about their potential military base, right? The um what's that military age? Was that 18 to what they say, like 45 or something like that, of military age men or something along those lines? That's what they care about. And of course the women care about their dating pool. And when Pascal was speaking, it was very interesting. And so when Kike was speaking, the opting out, that is a political move, right? And let me pause right here. Thank you for the super sticker, Excalibur. He says salute, or it's actually a super chat. Thank you salute. What's going on, brother? Right? Opting out is an act of defiance. It is a political move, right? And this is where Richard Reeves comes in. I would love to see Richard Reeves interview with Pascal and Jason, right, at M Toussaint, because they don't really have any incentives on the table. They're identifying a problem, finally, right? It's about time they're identifying the problem, but they don't actually have any solutions. And everything that we hear doesn't actually address the intimacy part of the conversation. Now, Mr. Z is not going to where Jordan Peterson is with some, forced monogamy type thing, or nah. But intimacy with women, marriage, children, not being on the table, I don't see how you can even have a conversation. I don't see where I don't see a start to the conversation if we're just gonna outright admit, yeah, by the way, yeah, we made the women a little too insufferable, and yeah, that marriage thing, that children, and that 2.3 kids and the nuclear family thing, about that, right? So once again, when Pascal started going on, and he got to a point where he really laid it on where it was, essentially these kids don't want to be wage slaves. These young men don't want to be wage slaves, and they don't really see the point in it. The part that all of them were walking around though and refused to go straight to, and this is where the Black Manosphere comes in. Yeah, you know what? Men would sign up for that. Yeah, believe it or not, ladies, men would sign up for a shorter lifespan. They would sign up to be a wage slave. They would sign up to be some slave to the corporate sector, right? They would sign up to potentially get a limb blown off or come back in a box. Yeah, men would sign up for all of that. if they knew that somewhere was a wife and the 2.3 kids and a house worth of damn. Yep. And Pascal is right. Pre New Deal, pre 1950s, yeah, the conservatives really over romanticize America and men's role in America. Your everyday working class man. We're not talking about the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, right? We're not talking about Chase, J.P. Morgan. We're not talking about none of that. No, we're talking about everyday. We're not talking about Ford. We're talking about everyday, regular working class men. Yeah, it wasn't all that, but they signed up for it because of wife and kids, and especially post New Deal, people signed up for it. Men signed up for it. You want to know why they're not signing up for it anymore? What women? Notice what I didn't say. I didn't say sex. Although that women are more increasingly taken off the table too for working class men. We're not talking about sex. We're talking about marriage. We're talking about real relationship. We're talking about intimacy, not just sex. We're talking about children, right? You know, and so Pascal gives a short story, or he kind of gives us a little bit his life story, and he tells us out of all of his aunts and uncles who came to America, I think he said something like 8 of them did, right? All the men except for two are gone. All of them died before the age of 60, working themselves to death, trying to put kids through college, right? Buying homes, doing for wife, even though the wives work also. And all of his uncles were out of here by 60, including his father. So you imagine and like Pascal was saying, you had all type of maid in Haiti. You had, you were some big shot in Haiti. You come to America, you got to work menial jobs. Okay, cool. Um, you have to try to put kids through college. You have to be talked down to by white folks, right? Something you didn't necessarily have to deal with in Haiti was the racism. Now you got to deal with the racism and being an immigrant at the same time. And coming down a few steps in class. And all of those men are gone, except for one notable uncle that he said. And this uncle is somewhere in his 70s, if I'm not mistaken, what Pascal was saying. The one uncle that didn't have kids and didn't get married. The one uncle he likened it to Uncle Lester, right? That's like your and he said everybody has this uncle, the uncle that stays at home with their mom, well into their 40s and 50s and 60s, and no matter how educated they are, no matter what they've accomplished, they pretty much stay home, and maybe they'll have a girlfriend here and there. For some of them, they might have kids, but for the most part, they don't bite off too much life. And he said that one uncle is the uncle that's still alive. Now, will you look at that? So what this isn't is Mr. Z advocating for that. What it is to say this system has gotten so toxic and it eats people up for fun so much that the people that are staying alive are the people that are throwing their hands up, the men that are throwing their hands up and saying, yeah, nah, nope. Right? And it reminds me of a joke. Even Chris Rock, I think, made a joke like this years ago, years and years and years ago, right? Where he's like, I think he said something along the lines of like going back to the old neighborhood and like the men that were still alive were like the deadbeats and like the crackheads and whatever, and he still see them on the corner. Meanwhile, all the fathers and the good men were gone. They were all dead. All the productive husbands and fathers were all dead. The bums were still alive. Right? And that's supremely interesting. A system that punishes you for being a father and a husband, especially if you're not, you know, balling out of control, if you don't have money leaking out of your ears. Right? The women are saying it, right? Some of some of your favorite black content creators are telling you if you have a wife, if you want a wife and you want kids, you better be earning some 300 and something $1,000 a year. That's what they're telling you. Darwinism much? Pascal goes on to say, if he could just maintain himself financially, this is the freest he's ever felt. This is the best time of his life, right? Because he's no longer on the right race, you know, essentially being a corporate wage slave. Your sons see that. I remember I've said this before. Some of you have heard me say this on other people's channel. I remember speaking to coworkers when I found out about the hikikomori over a decade ago, right? And I dealt, YouTube is a thing. So, you're doing your little YouTube research and you try to Google it and you try to find out as much as you can because it was fascinating to me. I'm a young man. I'm in my 20s at the time, early 20s, right? Mid 20s, early 20s. And I'm like, what dudes my same age like are not trying to chase women for sex and they're not trying to be in a relationship and they're staying at home. And I knew people that stayed at home. At the time I was at home with my parents, but like they're like this is their thing. They're not trying to contribute at all, right? They're not trying to really get money like that. And what? So you do your little research. And I remember speaking to coworkers about it and saying, yo, I think this could come here to America. And like, for most people, you're talking about 20, 23, 24, 25-year-old young men, 26, 27-year-old young men, primarily black men. First of all, they're entertaining you by even listening to you talk about this anyway. Let's be honest. Then secondly, if they do engage with you in the conversation, they're like, nah, bro, I don't see that coming over here. Hell no. Well, 15 years later, right? Right? 10 years later, and there you go. Japan, South Korea, Italy, America, other parts of Europe. Yep. Now what? Right? Now what? What did we think? Right? What did we think was going to happen? Second wave feminism plus late stage capitalism, or if you want to call it neoliberalism, fine. Second wave feminism plus neoliberalism. Yeah, this is what it looked like. Right? This is what it looks like. Doesn't look good at all. It's eating your children alive, primarily your boys, your men, your sons. The feminists want the power, the capitalists want the power, and they're crushing men. Right? And they put the cost of being a air quotes man, particularly a traditional man, up to the goddamn moon. That's what that means. But here's the catch, because somewhere in the world there's some feminists that say, then, well, don't play the game. Here's the catch: you still want the men to play the game. That's what's killing the men. Stop all your talk. You still want the men to play the game. You still want the traditional men. Shout out to all you feminists who are stay-at-home moms. Right? All you female empowerment women, type it on a keyboard somewhere. As you live off of the good graces of your husband. Right? Shout out to you. Right? So this is the cost of it. So Pascal is telling you a family full of educated, hardworking, Black Haitian immigrants, and like all but two of the men are gone. All of them out of here before the age of 60. Right? But that's not the part to hyper focus on. It's the part about the uncle that is still here that didn't sign up for none of this. Right? That didn't sign up for any of this. That's the uncle that's still here. And so I guess in a weird way, this is a continuation of one of the lives I did over a month ago now, when I spoke about Green Gorilla's stream, which was masterful to me, where he spoke about talk about intersectionality, the intersection of feminism and capitalism, right? And what that's doing to the family. I guess this in many ways is a continuation of that, but what this is doing to men and how it's inspiring, now we could say it, incels. How it's inspiring incels. Because the young men, even if they cannot um appropriately articulate it, this is the way they're acting. This is even if I would argue many of these people, I don't even know if they can actually verbalize exactly what they're doing. Right? I don't know if they can actually appropriately verbalize exactly what and exactly why they're doing what they're doing. But this is the end result. Stay at home with your parents well into your maybe 30s, 40s, maybe doing some menial job, barely sustaining yourself, right? Or sustaining yourself well, just not biting off too much life. Making sure that you're not obligated to anyone really, right? Making sure to leave yourself enough space to be able to move when you want to move, if you want to move, and live a fulfilling life, maybe outside of being a father and outside of being a husband. Once again, why not? Right? Once again, why not? So, Pascal was saying that, and it got real sobering. When Pascal started going in, it got real. Once again, I implore everybody to listen to that, except for maybe some of our empaths. If you're an empath and you're going to get real depressed, maybe not. But other than that, for everyone else, yeah. Because it gave a really good perspective from someone that's accomplished, right? It gave a really good perspective on where, I think the best way to say it is, how this is somewhat liberating. How this is men saying, yeah, nah, I'm not signing up for that. And for what, right? And they hear him say that, and they hear Pascal speak. It was, and be able to articulate, how he won't be going back was actually pretty interesting, right? Yeah, it was pretty interesting. And I'm sorry for the long pauses, you guys. I'm just trying to find a parking space here, and I want to make sure that you guys can also hear me where I'm not in a dead zone. Yeah. Okay. This sounds like a looks like a good place. I can park here. Hmm. Okay. Okay. That's good. All right. Um, so yeah, this was Revolution. Kike, Autry, Pascal, M. Toussaint, Jason Miles wasn't there. And it's actually kind of sad that Jason Miles wasn't there. I think he would have brought some levity to the conversation, right? But the how sober the conversation was important because it because of how well spoken Pascal is. He's able to articulate what and Pascal's a middle-aged man, right? But he's able to articulate what many young men are feeling, right? He's able to articulate what a lot better than I think some of these young men would be able to, right? Because we have to. This goes back to something I say all the time. What incentive, right? What are the incentives to be ground into fine powder? And some men will, as a matter of fact, I would argue most men, regardless of race, will sign up for that if you could give them a, an incentive. And what capitalism plus feminism has done is taken all the incentives off the table, or just about all the incentives off the table for everyday working class men, and then still said for them to do, still is demanding that they do, while also, by the way, being belittled, insulted by the elites. Whether that's entertainers, shout out to all you rappers out there. Yes, Mr. Z is a whole hypocrite because I listen to rap and I'm never gonna stop. Um, that goes for your politicians. That goes for prominent women, right? That goes for your entertainment class. Everybody's defecating on your everyday working class men, but you need these men to continue to prop up the system. And you haven't even been able to incentivize them to do so for the past 4 to 5 decades. And for the slowest amongst us, the ones that are the slowest on the uptake, they've really realized it over the past 2 decades, even more recently over the past decade, right? So who can blame these men? Who can blame them? You work hard, you strive. For what? You don't even get a goal watch. Like we said, and I'm gonna have to do a review on that video. It's actually on my community tab. Um, and it speaks about the current business model. And absolutely the antithesis of the old business model of trying to keep you in a place for 30 years, right? 30, 40 years. Now the current business model is to get you out the door within 5 to 7 years, right? And that's why you have the people speaking and acting the way they are right now. And I would argue, you know what was fascinating, and y'all let me know if what y'all think about this. So Mr. Z finds it fascinating that in the midst of all of this entrepreneurial talk and startup talk and business talk and you know all of this talk over the at least throughout my entire life, when I found out that entrepreneurship was actually at a 40-year low in the US, that said everything. That told you everything you needed to know. Now that was pre-COVID. I'm waiting and I'm gonna look this up how it looks now. But pre-COVID, entrepreneurship was at a 40-year low. So we're all talking this entrepreneurial talk, and yet entrepreneurship is at a 40-year low, or at least it was at a 40-year low, right? And I think that's what you see going on with many of these men to kind of draw a parallel. All these men are talking about taking supplements and going to the gym and being the best you can be and believing in yourself. And they talked about Jordan Peterson on the show. So cleaning up your room and all of this other stuff. Meanwhile, if you put crisis of masculinity on the YouTube, you'll get dozens of videos, right? Crisis of masculinity. But is it crisis of masculinity for the elite men that get to perform manhood a particular way? Or is it crisis of masculinity for all the other men who are being pushed out of that performance? Meanwhile, the society that includes the women are still demanding, excuse me, that men perform masculinity in this prescribed way, right? So, you know, and I'm sorry, to take such a sober tone this morning, right? But listening to Pascal speak, particularly about his father and his uncles who are no longer with us, and the one uncle who still is, that was very interesting, right? And then listening to Pascal speak about his own current situation, right? So yeah, you're gonna see that. You're gonna see more and more men throw their hands up, especially in a system that refuses to incentivize them with the basics. And if we're going to become increasingly atomized, then it won't just be the men feeling the pain and feeling the hurt, right? And so be it. Yes, men die earlier than women, right? But it's one thing to die 5, 6 years earlier than women, but both the men and the women had the experiences of being with each other, raising family, seeing kids and grandkids, and all of this other thing. It's a whole different experience where both people never had children, um, never really saw eye to eye. Um, what the young lady said, are touch starved, right? Are virgins or have been celibate for some 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's a whole different ball game. Which begs the question that I've asked before: what was the point of all the technology then? Right? What was the point of all the technology if where it got us was atomized, lonely, miserable, angry people? Right? On a side note, I'm parked um in front of this breakfast spot, and the way people are driving through this parking lot to dash in and then dash out is crazy. Like, right? So that's all I want to come to get you guys with today. I'm not gonna belabor it too much, right? I just want to kind of give, and I definitely want y'all to check out that stream. It's about an hour long, and shout out to the brother Pascal Robert. Um, very, and thank you for being so candid with your family dynamic or your situation. Well, it wasn't, he didn't really give us his family dynamic, but you know um with a bit of your life story, right? And I think you were able to articulate for those that are not, that don't understand, better than even the people that are living the life. I think Pascal was able to articulate this better than many people that are living the life, and how freeing it is for him to not really have those obligations, right? To not have to pay insane bills, to not be married, to not have children, and how somewhat liberating that is, right? So, on that note, love, peace, and chicken grease. I will pause right here, right? Um, yeah, have a great rest of y'all day. Go check out other non-manosphere content. Go check out other manosphere content. And Mr. Z out. All right, everybody. Y'all have a great rest of y'all day. Thank you for listening. And please check out the link in the description box. Um, it gets really good about midway through. Yeah, it's just a great conversation, and I'm glad that they were able to delve into the outside forces that are contributing to this kind of, I don't want to say rise of the incels. It's not really, but kind of, right? So it was but it was good to hear people that are able to once again explain where we are and how we got here, right? And on that note, I'll pause right now. All right, there, excuse me. And y'all have a great rest of y'all day. What is going on with Mr. Z right now? I don't know. I'm getting tongue tied all over the place. Y'all have a great rest of y'all day. All right, everyone. Mr. Z out.